Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to Balance, where we weekly talk about the importance of balancing our bodies, minds, spirits, and community. I'm John, and today our guest is clinical social worker Laura Johnston. Welcome to Balance. Well, good afternoon, viewers. Welcome back to our Balanced episodes. We are very happy that you joined us for this second episode of our series, which is called Emotional Balance. Last week, we kicked that off and we talked about sleep, and I hinted at the end of that Balanced series, a Balanced episode, that we were going to talk about something connected to that today. So before we jump into that, I just want to introduce our guest to us today so you can get to know her a little bit. This is Laura Johnston, which is one of our licensed clinical social workers at Samaritan. Thank you, Laura, for helping us today with this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be good. We're talking about one of those crazy things in our lives that we all have to deal with, and that is self-talk. And I mentioned at the end of last week's episode, when we were talking about sleep, that sometimes the reason our sleep gets interrupted is because our self-talk sort of goes off. And so thanks for helping us with this today, because I think it's fair to say this is maybe one of the most important things to our emotional well-being. You think that's true?
Oh, I definitely would agree with that. As a clinician who incorporates cognitive behavioral therapy interventions and strategies into my work with clients, I'm very aware that self-talk plays a major role in emotional well-being. Self-talk is basically the conversation we have with ourselves as we go through our daily lives. Put simply, the positive or helpful self-talk will result in positive emotions, while negative or unhelpful self-talk can result in negative or unpleasant emotions.
So you mentioned cognitive, see if I'm saying it right, cognitive behavioral therapy, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about that, how you would utilize that. What is that?
Okay. We talk about the cognitive model, which basically, I think we have a graphic for this. Something happens, and the person has an interpretation or a thought about what happened, and then an emotion occurs as a result of the thought. And finally, there's a behavior in response to that emotion. Sometimes it's tempting to think something happens and you have an emotional response. But in this model, something happens and it's your thoughts and interpretations that lead to the emotion that you have. For example,
okay.
I'm working at a fast food restaurant and my supervisor says, "Laura, I need to talk to you in my office at noon." And my thought is, I'm going to be fired because I'm a terrible worker. The resulting emotion might be something unpleasant, like nervousness or fear, sorrow, sadness, or even anger. And my behavior might be crying or yelling or running away. If, on the other hand, my thought is, he probably just wants to check in on me and see how I'm adjusting to my new job and tell me what a great job I'm doing, then my emotion might be something like happiness, pride, or a feeling of self-worth.
Yeah.
And behavior might be to smile and greet the next customer while looking forward to the meeting. So as we go through these days, we have this internal dialogue, and that's our self-talk or our inner voice. Then we go into the unhelpful thinking and how we can work through that. Unhelpful thinking is based on what we call thinking errors or cognitive distortions. One of them is catastrophizing. I think we have a good for this too.
Yeah.
Being able to see only the worst possible outcome of a situation. For example, I'll probably just mess up during the interview and then I'll never get this job or any other job for that matter. Then there's also all or nothing thinking, thinking in absolutes such as always, never, every time. For example, I never do a good enough job on anything. I'm never going to amount to anything. I always mess up. And overgeneralization, which is making broad interpretations from a single event. For example, I messed up this interview, so I'm a total failure. I always mess up everything. Yes. And there are other unhelpful thinking styles, of course. I just picked up 3 as examples. And if anybody wants to look into it more, there's a website called therapistaid.com that has excellent free information. Click on worksheets and click on CBT, and you can find tons of information there. It's very helpful.
Okay.
So then back to the CBT process.
Yeah.
What we try to do is develop a fuller awareness of our self-talk and whether it's helpful or unhelpful, rational or irrational, distorted or realistic. And the idea is to catch, challenge, and change the unhelpful thinking patterns.
Mm-hmm.
You try to catch the thoughts that are unhelpful and challenge them by asking questions like, is there evidence to support this thought? Is there evidence contrary to my thought? Am I interpreting the event without all the evidence? Will this matter a year from now or 5 years from now? And our thoughts can be so automatic that it takes some effort to figure out which automatic thoughts are affecting our emotions. So sometimes with CBT, we might use a tool called a thought log throughout the day to develop a fuller awareness of our automatic thoughts just by writing them down. And that can help us notice connections between thoughts and emotions. For example, quote, when I'm thinking I'm incapable, I feel very anxious and unworthy. And then we change the I am incapable thought to something more helpful. Like, there have been plenty of times when I've achieved my goals and accomplished difficult tasks. I just need to put my nose to the grindstone and work hard. So we're basically replacing unrealistic, unhelpful thoughts with more helpful and realistic ones in order to improve the emotional response.
Yeah.
And Aaron Beck was one of the founders of CBT, and he said, quote, it's the interpretation that hurts, not the fact itself. It's not the event or what happened,
Right.
It's how you interpret it that hurts.
Yeah.
Can hurt. It's not the fact of being called into the boss's office that hurts. It's how I talk to myself about the fact that the boss calls me into his office. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I like that catch, challenge, change, because again, as a logical thinker, I'm like, okay, how does this start? So that it sounds like the catching as the first part is potentially the most important thing, obviously, to catch that, and then what am I going to do with it, correct?
Mm-hmm. Becoming more aware of it. Because they are, we call them automatic thoughts. They just happen automatically. And so sometimes you don't even notice that you're doing it. So it's more paying more attention to what your thoughts are and how thoughts are leading to your moods and emotions. Yes.
So back to the sleep thing, if we wake up in the middle of the night and we realize what we're thinking is, catastrophizing or, whatever it is, that then we can actually hopefully get back to sleep a little bit better because we've caught it, right?
Yeah. And then we can work with it.
Yeah.
How likely is that will actually happen?
So true. This is really good. I appreciate you sharing these thoughts with us. And viewers, this is the kind of thing that's available to you when you reach out. If you're caught, seriously, if you're caught in a lot of anxious thoughts and unhelpful thoughts, that you're like, I just can't get out of this. seeing someone like Laura from our office is going to be worth your time, and that's why we're here to help change that behavioral cycle that you're in, and to help you find the tools, give you the tools to move forward and have emotional balance, which is what we're talking about in this series. Well, viewers, again, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week for our third episode of this series. And next week, we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, comparing shame and guilt and how that impacts our emotional wellness. So tune in for that next Wednesday. For the rest of this day, we just hope that your day is great. We'll see you next week.